Lillian Ginta.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I rise to speak on the International Finance Agreements Amendment Bill, second reading. To answer the question posed by my colleague Mark Mitchell earlier in this debate, the Green Party is supporting this bill. The Green Party does support banks and infrastructure banks, particularly if they are oriented towards solving our urgent need to invest in infrastructure that will respond to both climate change and inequality, the two biggest challenges our world is facing. In fact, before the last election, the Green Party had a policy of a green investment bank here in New Zealand that was going to be a commercially run bank that would facilitate investment in clean technology and energy here in New Zealand, because we feel there's a bit of a gap in the market here in New Zealand. The cost of setting up that bank would actually have been slightly less than the cost that we're donating to the Asian Infrastructure Investment Bank. About $120 million over a period of time, and it would have been run on commercial grounds, and we still think that's a good policy, and we'd love it if the government picked that policy up. When it comes to the Asia Infrastructure Investment Bank, we can see why New Zealand would want to be involved in such an endeavor, that it's about being a good neighbor in Asia. It's about ensuring that we're at the table and hopefully influencing decisions in a way that is going to result in the type of infrastructure being built, being infrastructure that is going to benefit the region in the long term, not just benefit in the short term and not just benefit the people procuring the infrastructure or building the infrastructure. And I think it's really important that we note at this point our concern. I think there's every indication that the Asian Infrastructure Investment Bank is going to be run on principles that take into account the reality of climate change and that have a focus on environmental sustainability as well as poverty reduction, because it is impossible to respond to one of those challenges without responding to the other. And so, as my colleague Marama Davidson said in her maiden speech to the House yesterday, it is impossible to address either climate change or inequality without addressing both. And there was recently a report from the Global Commission on the Economy and Climate. It's the New Climate Economy. They're putting out a lot of really helpful reports. These are big global players, including Deutsche Bank. And they say in their report that it is urgent now that we get collaboration not only between governments, but between communities, between business, between investors, on addressing the risk of catastrophic climate change. And it's urgent that all players, public sector, private sector, are working together to ensure that we seize the opportunity presented by climate change to ensure that the infrastructure we invest in now is actively reducing our carbon pollution. And it's, unfortunately, for the past 50 or 60 years, much of our investment in infrastructure has actually aggravated climate change by increasing pollution and increasing carbon emissions, and it hasn't actually done as much as we would have liked to reduce inequality. Although we've seen global incomes rise in some developing countries, that growth hasn't been equally shared by all people in those communities. And we've seen a real concentration of capital in the hands of a few, which is driving ongoing challenges, both social challenges, environmental challenges, and actually economic challenges. Arguably, the reason the global economy has failed to bounce back from the great financial crisis, the global financial crisis, is because there is such growth in inequality and such concentration of capital in the hands of very, very few people. And so it's essential that when we assess the types of infrastructure projects that we're investing in Asia through the Asia Infrastructure Investment Bank or here in New Zealand, that we assess that infrastructure in terms of its ability to reduce pollution and to reduce inequality. And unfortunately, at the moment, the current government has an infrastructure program which is not really going to do anything to reduce pollution and arguably isn't going to do anything to improve economic efficiency, which is a real shame because there is that opportunity. And the Green Party would like nothing more than to see the national government seize this economic opportunity, because there is not a trade-off. It is not the case that we have to sacrifice our pristine natural environment and the future stability of our climate in order to get richer and have economic growth. Actually, there are many opportunities where the economy will function better by doing the things that actually restrict pollution and reduce pollution. And a perfect example is in the transport infrastructure being invested in this country right now. There is a real priority on a few big projects that will do nothing to reduce congestion, even though that's their purported purpose. They will do nothing to reduce the cost of moving goods and people around the country. And it will do nothing to reduce carbon pollution or inequality. So here we have the opportunity. And I, as a former transportation planner, urban planner, am very passionate about the opportunities that exist to create infrastructure that is much smarter, that costs less money, that enables people and households to live in great places, to live close to where they work, to live and to do so in a way that reduces both the personal cost to them, but also the environmental impact. And so we've got these win-wins. I can see in the language around the Asian Infrastructure Investment Bank that that idea, which is really gathering a whole lot of steam globally, is included in the principles upon which the bank were set up, and that's why the Green Party is happy to support this bill. But we would like to see more of that type of thinking here in New Zealand, and we have the opportunity to do so. And you know, particularly coming up to the climate talks at the end of this year, there's a real momentum gathering, not just amongst governments, of course, not with our government, but other governments, but also in the business community. And I note today that Business New Zealand has announced that they're going carbon neutral because they see the risks and opportunities presented by the new climate economy. And I put the question to our government, the national government, when are they going to take the challenges and opportunities of climate change and inequality seriously and start applying that logic to policies here in this country, because we all stand to benefit from smarter policy that results in a cleaner environment and a fairer society.
Nice one.
Mr. Speaker.